So take a look right here. Here's my fills for today on the Tesla trade. So I basically just let my prior experiences, which was yesterday having a bad red day, scare me out of my current position, right? So having bad experiences kind of push into the next day of trading, which I'm not happy or proud to admit that that has happened to me today. Whereas I literally just messed up and lost a complete banger. So as you can see, based off the fills, I did enter right here. So I literally, when market opened and we tested this 395 level, I was just kind of waiting to see any type of reaction against this level, as I was willing to risk a break below this level as a stop out. And essentially I was targeting the 406 area, right? So you could see, like, hindsight, perfect trade, right? But let's talk about my issue that I've had a little bit lately, where it's I let a lot of unrealized gains go against me. So especially when you're trading on Robinhood, you kind of see when you're peaked out for the day, right? When your contracts hit a peak, right? It'll kind of show on your little UI saying like, oh, up like $300 today, up $400 today, up $500 today, right? But that's unrealized until you close a position. So you're actually up $500 today, right? So what I did see was that, so let's just take a look on the like why I picked it pre-market, right? So the reason why I picked it initially was because on the daily chart, you can see we have a horizontal support area around 386, and this also line up with the 200 day here. And not only that, but we have a gap over red setup, right? So what is a gap over red setup, you may ask? A gap over red setup is when the prior day closed as a bearish bar. So right here, you can see it's a bearish bar, and then we ended up gapping above yesterday's range, right? So that's known as a gap over red. So typically with gap over reds, what I do like to see is some type of retracement or pullback into yesterday's range, right? Or basically in the level, right? So you guys see right here, essentially we did gap up overnight, right? Gapped up overnight, and the closest support level I have is this 395 area. 395 area, and ideally the first target was overnight highs, then 406, right? So let's take a look on the 5-minute chart as to what I was looking at. So the reason why I did exit this trade around, I want to say, I was looking at like the 3-minute time frame at that given time. I think when I saw we were unable to hold this candle's low right here, right? So you may think like, oh, like you're trailing out too fast, like, you could have managed your position better. Yeah, of course I could have, right? But hindsight is, that's all hindsight talking. And when I was looking at the current time frame, or when I was looking at it, the price action live, I had to make a quick decision whether or not I wanted to keep the position or not, right? And all I did was, when it peaked out around here, I think it hit about 25%. When it pulled back around here, I think it was only up 10%. And I was like, do I want to go back break even or end this trade? Not really. Let me just cut the trade, right? And the thing about trading sometimes is that it's like an art. You have to find the balance between letting the trade breathe and work out versus taking profits in time before letting it go against you, right? So one thing I tried to keep myself patient in was looking at the 5-minute chart, right? And I was like, oh, 5-minute chart pulling back to 20 EMA. I do use EMAs, but mainly just to give me like a trend analysis. And sometimes I use a support resistance. I would say the market's very dynamic, so they don't always work, right? But the one thing I was looking at, I was like, oh, okay, like when this first red bar formed, I was like, okay, it's fine. 5-minute 1, 2, 3 to the upside. It's okay. The scary thing was for right here was that I was afraid that we tagged the overnight highs here and we were just gonna reject and fade off, right? But clearly, the key level that I should have used in terms of holding this trade was the opening print, right? Very very clean and simple level. Let's mark this out here. So opening print around 397.85. This level right here literally backtested to the T, right? And think about it this way, right? Like Albrook says, when you have a very strong first bar to the upside, that could kind of dictate the day's trend, right? So strong bar upside, pulls back, reverses after swiping off the overnight highs, pulls back, retests retests the opening print, right? Holds above the level, so never even invalidates my stop loss area, which is a hold below at that point low of day, right? And with my entry around, I want to say here, it was a little over a 2R trade to the upside, right? But I just couldn't sit through it, so that was the issue of mine. Ended up pulling back. This was a nice buy signal here where we had a pause bar fails to go lower, and then we kind of catch a reversal bar to the upside. So then we catch a bullish engulfing candle bar right here, which is a good signal to get back into the trade, risking this low, right? Because if you would have even waited for the bar to close up here, right, you would have got a minimum 2R of a trade, even to the upside. So it's like 2.5R trade, even with this late entry right here of a close on the 5-minute bar. So yeah, that was that. That was Tesla for you, right? But let's switch over to a little tricky day, right? Let's switch over to PLTR. Another tricky one, right? Another tricky trade I had. So PLTR, why did I have it on watch? PLTR, I saw that it was basically basing out here, right? So let's just remove all the levels. I saw that, we basically were cracking somewhat of a downtrend here. I guess you could use this as like a trend line, but essentially I saw that if you take a look at the weekly chart, what I was looking at, the weekly had an inside bar breakout. So right here, you can see that somewhat of an inside bar, but overall, if you take a look at the chart, right, rallying, pulling back, right, rallying, pulling back, right, rallying, pulling back, right, rallying, pulling back, right, deeper pullback to here. What I kind of saw was that this overall trend is pretty bullish, right? It's just a matter of fact of, are we going to continue to break to the upside, right? So when I saw that we did catch a nice gap up from yesterday's close, so if we take a look on the, let's do 15-minute chart, it's a little easier to see. You can see we caught a nice gap up, right? So at this point, I'm a little hesitant in taking this trade, as typically with gap ups, I want to see somewhat of a retracement early on before just holding the open and just rallying to the upside, right? Because for me, I want to see some covering before I want to see a next leg up. But I was like, okay, whatever, fine. The stock is pretty strong. Let me take my shot, right? So let's mark out the levels we always mark out, right? So it's opening print. Opening print is marked. And then also here's a screenshot of my trades for PLTR. Okay, back to the trade. Okay, so opening print is marked now, right? When I saw an initial rally, I was like, okay, like let me just wait for a pullback to get back in long, right? And I think I was watching it from, I want to say either the 5-minute or the 3-minute, don't remember exactly, but when I did, I think it was definitely the 5-minute. When I did see this pullback, I was like, okay, like bearish bar, and think about it this way. When you're totally in an uptrend, right? So let's just look at the daily chart. We're moving today. From all of this action, we're literally accumulating here and we're ripping to the upside, right? The first bearish bar should not be like, oh, I'm gonna use it as a reversal. No, you have to use context of the trade, right? What is the context of the trend, right? When looking for a trade, you want to look for the trend, the level, and the signal, right? So what's going on here is that the trend is the upside, bearish bar right here, bearish engulfing candle. Is that a sign of short? Maybe. I had a level at 150 here. It might be a rejection to this area. But instead, I want to play the trend. That's just the type of trader I am. I like to play a trend. So, rally, pulls back. Once you broke back above this candle's high, or once the candle closed up here, I ended up entering and I was risking below this blue line right here, right? And this trade was totally fine for me, as my target of 2R was at basically 155, and I still had a little room to 155.41, which is my next target, right? So trade was perfectly fine as we were running to the upside. The main issue was this pullback, right? So this pullback was really aggressive, and I was about 30% of my contracts at this given point, or 25%. And when I saw this bar followed by this bar, I was like, yo, come on, dog. You can't just, give me like an easier setup to just trade, right? So that made me hold through this little choppy area, right? Hold through this little choppy area. I ended up holding here as I tried to convince myself that the trade setup was still fine. Switched to 15-minute chart, and 15-minute looked fine. This bar was a little scary, as we did have another bearish engulfing candle followed by a bullish engulfing candle, but I just kept reminding myself, what's the overall trend? Bullish, right? What's the overall trend? Bullish, right? So when this candle formed, I ended up taking 2 contracts off around here, took another contract off here, and then I took my final contract off at high of day, right? So overall, this trade was decent, held it for very, very long, and that was a stressful trade. So, we had one winner, right? A nice, pretty winner. And then we also had a very hesitant trade where it could have been a banger as well. But because, self-infliction and using past experiences and pushing them for the next day kind of scared me out of my position. That's just the result of poor mindset that could be improved over time, right? Because I'm not going to lie, I'm not the perfect trader. I'm still trying to develop my edge over time, still trying to be the best trader I could possibly be, right? I think that's just the nature of trading. No one's ever going to be perfect at the game. But, I've been going at this for like over 5, I think it's like 6 years now. Yeah, 6 years. I've been training since COVID. So, I'm just trying to get 1% better every single day, hence the name Kaizen Trading. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that video, and I'll look to catch you guys in another one.